I want to give you a little update on Mr. Weldon because he is such a beloved person here in our fellowship. For everyone who may not know what's happened, he's been in the hospital for a couple of weeks now. Started out because he was very weak and having trouble breathing and not certain about his heart. And so they had run a number of tests and they were trying to figure out what was going on, and he didn't seem to be getting a lot better. And then it seemed like he had a turn for the good. He had a couple of days that he was doing wonderful and was thinking that maybe something would happen pretty soon, that he may even possibly come home. And it was 2 days ago that I think they had a real good night. Stephanie had stayed the night with him and got up that morning and was starting the day. And all of a sudden the nurses and the staff come running in the room, and his heart rate had gotten up to 170 beats per minute. And they were rushing around. They finally ended up taking him to the critical care unit where they eventually shocked him and it got his rhythm back to where it was supposed to be, and now his heart rate is back at a normal heart rate, but he's very, very weak. His kidney functions are down to about 10%, and so he's not strong enough for him to even be put on dialysis. I tell you all of this so that you'll be very prayerful for Mr. Weldon. He's been struggling with his health for a number of years. I know a lot of times we see him in here each Sunday. He looks fine. He's dressed up. He seems fit, but just getting ready each day has been quite a chore for him. And I do think a lot of Mr. Weldon, and I'm just ask that you be prayerful with him. And I ask you to, I know when they're in the critical care unit, there's only certain times for visitors, and I know that his family would like to see him during those times. I'm not saying not to go see him, but be courteous to give the family the time that they need to see with him during those short visitation periods in the critical care unit. But the main thing I ask is that you be very prayerful for him. It's good to see all of you here today. It's good to see Dot and I know you know your name, Luann. It's good to see Dot and Luann here today. You did? Well, happy birthday. You look 22. 52. God bless you, dear. Good to see Peggy here. It's good to see all of you. And what I'll do next week, I'll tell you another guest speaker that we're having. If this is what it takes to get it all full, I'll have guest speakers here every Sunday if that's what's going on. God bless you for being here, though. I want to introduce two men to you, and one last thing I want to say before I introduce these men. Next Sunday, we will be having a child or baby dedication service. If you have a desire to dedicate your child to the Lord, I'm going to ask that you'll get up with April Tudor. Raise your hand, April. April's got her hands full. But there, see, there's her hand back there. You need to get up with April Tudor if you want to dedicate your child next Sunday, if you want to be a part of this ceremony, because I need to get your names and the children's name, and April will get all that information from you, and then I want to speak with you. I do encourage you to do this, but think seriously about what it is that you're doing, because more than anything, parents, it is a parent dedication that you make up your mind that I am going to raise my child in a place where they will learn about the Lord. So you think about that and pray about it, but let April know in the next few days, because we'd like to make some arrangements to talk with you. Two men that are going to be coming to speak this morning, Mr. Josh Isberner and also Mr. Jamie Jones. Josh will be coming first, and just a couple things about each of them. Josh and his family have been attending our church for nearly as long as I've been here at Albertson. Josh and Zaya came, I guess it was just a few months after I started preaching here, wasn't it? Josh, when did you guys start coming here? Do you remember? Zaya, do you remember? September. So less than 6 months from when I had started. They had moved here from Hawaii, I guess, didn't you? And bought a little farm right up the road and started attending church here. It's an interesting thing that I see in a lot of people's lives that you may not see in your own life. I ask you a lot of times, I think I asked last week, do you see yourself the same as you did a year ago? Do you think the same way that you thought about things a year ago? And that's a question that we should ask ourselves regularly to see whether or not we're maturing in our faith. And I watched Josh and I've watched Jamie both really mature in their faith. And I think if you were to ask them, they may would say, no, I'm really not that much different than I was. Because usually when we live in the same place, of ourselves, we don't see ourselves as other people do. I see some wonderful things in Josh Isberner's life and Jamie Jones's life as they've been growing in their faith. And Josh and Zaya have attended all the services that we ever have here at Albertson, and I have Bible study at my house on Monday nights. They've probably been the most faithful attendees that I've had of all the years I've been teaching. They're always faithful in coming to study God's Word and learning from it and growing from it. And I've been watching Josh as he's been more and more engaged in talking about the Lord and about his knowledge in the Bible is always increasing. I'm just excited to watch him as he's grown in his faith. He has just a couple of years left to retire in the Marine Corps. And so, and Josh, if you'll come on up and I'll let you get started. And Jamie Jones, everybody knows him. I always think of Jamie, I hope in this way, there's nobody in this church that picks on me more than Jamie Jones. Nobody. And I got to think that he cares about me or loves me, or he absolutely cannot stand me. It's one of the two. But the thing that Jamie was concerned with today, because he's concerned about each of you here and he loves each one of you, he wanted to make sure that the timing worked out where I wouldn't have anything to say after the service. So he's worked all this out because he's actually going to conclude so he can handle that and work it all out. Go ahead and take the clock down, Tim, back there if you will, so he doesn't have anything to see. But Jamie, I'm very proud of you, son. I'm just excited to see what God's doing in your life. And as you and Crystal have worked with the children so much and started these Bible studies in your home again, I'm just super excited about how God's using you and your family. And it's just been a blessing to me to have been working with you these past few years. But Josh, I will ask you to clip this on somewhere.
Okay, does this thing work? We good? All right. Yep. Well, first thing, since I've already been asked today, the sunglasses are not because I think I'm cool. All right, it's medical. I get really kicker headaches if I don't wear it, so I figured I'd do that instead of give this talk in the fetal position on the floor, so we'll be good. When Steve asked me to come up here and talk, besides the deer in the headlights, terrified look that I gave him, I didn't expect him to do that. Usually it's, pick up something heavy or grab something on the top shelf, not necessarily come and speak. So it took me a couple days to get back to him, and I had to really think about it. Getting up here in front of people you know and love is definitely a harder thing to do than to teach people you don't know. And especially on this subject, it's kind of, who am I? Am I good enough to get up here? Am I Christian enough to get up and talk? And it took me a minute to say yes, but essentially when in my line of work, when somebody who's senior to you asks you to do something, it's usually not an option. So it's like, well, why change that now? So here I am, and we're giving it a go. I talked to my brother that the next day as well, and he said, isn't that for people who have made it or have advanced far enough in their walk in life to where they're, I guess, senior enough to get up and speak. And basically, the longer I've been coming here, the more I've seen is there's only one made it. And well done, my good and faithful servant, is when you've made it. And prior to that, we're all just trying to learn as much as we can and to live life the best way possible. And I definitely haven't made it. So the topic I chose to talk about is pride. And I've definitely got issues or events in my life that have been definitely where the Lord has been dealing with me as far as pride, and not necessarily how great I think I am or anything along those lines, but as I searched and thought through my personal experiences and tried to come up with a way of how to tell it up here and speak, the only thing I could think was that it sounded like I was whining. So I know everybody's got trials in life. Everybody goes through a lot of hard stuff, and I don't want to get up here and act like my life's the hardest thing and I've gone through so much. So I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to talk about a few things that that have helped me along the way, or things that I've been focusing on of late to help me make my decisions. And pride, one of the things Jonathan Stormer actually got me going to read, listen to more often than read, C.S. Lewis. And been listening to a lot of the audiobooks in there. We get that British accent in there and everything else. It's kind of cool. But said the devil's most effective and destructive tool is pride. And pride is the very thing that made the devil who he is. If it weren't for the pride and thinking that he was good or even better than God himself, he never would have been. And that pride then is what pushed him into the garden and to deceive man into eating the fruit from that forbidden tree, which got us to where we are now in that fall. And it's something that God deals with harshly. Pride is one of those things that he doesn't pull any punches. The Old Testament example of God dealing with man's pride is the story of King Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel 4, King Nebuchadnezzar was getting a little too big for his britches. He'd had a dream, and he had Daniel come interpret it for him. And Daniel told him, look, you're about to be humbled. If you don't change what you're doing, God's going to humble you in a big way. And he didn't heed that warning. Daniel 4, 29 and 30 said, 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? Totally focused on himself and what he's accomplished in his life and his kingdom. And he was humbled because he didn't heed that warning. He was humbled by, the Lord made him insane, had him walking on all fours like an animal and living in the wilderness for 7 years. Like I said, he doesn't hold any punches. Me personally, walking on all fours and eating grass doesn't sound like a very good time. Once he had been humbled, God brought him back to his position, even greater than what he was before, but there was a difference. Daniel 4, verse 37, now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. The only thing that he said was that I recognize who the man is. There wasn't anything about him and what he'd done or anything along those lines. Other passages that I've used to maintain some focus, Proverbs 11:2, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. Proverbs 16, verse 18 and 19, pride goes before destruction. A haughty spirit, which me and all my intelligence, I needed to look that up. Haughty meaning arrogantly superior. All right, an arrogantly superior spirit before a fall. I mean, you get cocky, it's coming. Better to be lowly in spirit along with the oppressed than to share plunder with the proud. And then the New Testament, Luke 18, 9 through 14, the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. I think recently, I've heard it talked about here many times, the Pharisee basically thanking God for making him better than the others, that I'm not such a sinner like the tax collectors, and the tax collector coming in and beating his chest in repentance because of his sin. And Jesus explaining that the tax collector is where you want to be. Pride causes you to take your eyes off God and to focus on yourself. If you're drawn away from the Lord, you're doing the same thing to those you influence. If you are a negative influence on the world, then he will deal with you sooner or later. The big quote that I've been, that basically the day that Steve asked me to come up here and speak, that hit me hard. And that, like I said, I was listening to C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. The quote is, "There is no fault which makes a man more unpopular, and no fault which we are more unconscious of in ourselves. And the more we have it in ourselves, the more we dislike it in others." And that last portion, the more we have it in ourselves, the more we dislike it in others, is what hit me between the running lights. Because a dude that's cocky running around, running his mouth, so to speak, drives me nuts. So if I dislike it that much, what's that saying about me, as per this quote? So that's caused me to slow down and really look at myself as what I need to do. Obviously, the opposite of pride is to humble yourself. James chapter 4, verse 10, "Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up." Luke 18, verse 14, "For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." Quote from Jonathan Edwards, "We must view humility as one of the most essential things that characterizes true Christianity." The best example that we have of humility is the example of Jesus Christ. He showed us in completeness what it is to be humble. Just the act of becoming man is an extreme example. To leave heaven and come to teach us how to live by showing us instead of just telling us. Coming down from that pedestal to look us in the eyes and say, "This is how it's done." He humbled himself with a purpose. So should we humble ourselves with the purpose of glorifying him. To be humble, in my mind, is to exhibit self-control over yourself and your emotions. We all like to be praised and to think that we are good. I'm a pretty good guy. I do everything to the best of my ability, make the best go at it. I'm pretty good. To maintain that self-control and give credit where credit is due, in my opinion, is being humble. All the credit belongs to him. And to express that to those that want to praise you, that the power of Christ is the reason that I have done well, and without him is nothing, in my mind, is that's being humble. Jesus said to love your neighbor as yourself, and not just your neighbor. He's speaking about everybody. Love everyone. Not to lash out at those who oppress you or treat you badly because I don't deserve to be treated like that. That, in my mind, is the pride. Who says you don't deserve it? Christ didn't deserve to be treated like he was on the cross. But he showed us the perfect example of his teachings of how to love one another. The self-control that he displayed, allowing himself to be beaten and crucified on that cross when he had the power to create this world, instead of overpowering those that beat him and flexing his power, he humbled himself so that we may be saved from our sin. Jesus is the example that we must follow to maintain control over our pride. That self-control is impressive to me. Somebody comes up and tries beating me. If I can show anything close to what he did, take a picture. One last quote that gives me hope in this walk and trying to gain that humility is from Francois Fenelon. Humility is not a grace that can be acquired in just a few months. It is the work of a lifetime. And it is a grace that is precious in the sight of God, who in due course will exalt all who embrace it. With that, and in prayer. Lord, thank you for your word. that we are able to use to help guide us through this life. Please help us to recognize the times when we let pride get in the way of living life the way that you intended. Let our lives be used as instruments to draw others near to you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
You step down, man. Let me step up. Kind of like David and Goliath out here with this guy. Just put it in your pocket. All right, that good? Oh, yeah. You know, every time I think about coming here, I always think about I go to New Hope Church, and I used to go to daycare and after school, and they have little doors here from the cafeteria. Me and some friends used to always sneak up here. We used to come right here to the podium. There were some wore-out spots from where the preachers stand, and to us, if you stepped there, you wanted a preacher, you were going to hell. There was no doubt. I remember us hitting each other, push each other, be like jumping over it. Oh, man. So it feels weird getting up here and getting in front of everybody like this. But thank you for the opportunity to come in front of you and speak today. But I wish I was a theologian, somebody like Steve, like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the guy who, you know, he wrote Discipleship and a book on ethics. I went through half of Discipleship, and I was lost. I mean, it was crazy. But I did finish his biography. It was real impressive. The guy was all about church, all about Jesus. Every conversation he had was all about Jesus. It was amazing that somebody could walk that type of life. But I just want to get here and talk to you about some instances in my life that I feel like God put me in a situation to change me from who I was to what he wanted me to be. But first of all, let me give you a little background on me. You know, I had 3 brothers growing up, and you know how it goes. The older brother picks on the middle one, and the middle one picks on the last one. So if anything ever, you look at Clint and he's messing up, he was the youngest one. So there you go. He knows what it, you know, that's why. But growing up, I grew up with some special people in my life, and my little brother Chris, you know, he's a little slow, had problems. You know, when I look back on it, it's amazing growing up with somebody like that. The stuff we go through and the stuff we experience, it was just amazing. And my dad was a special guy too. I think most people's dads are special guys, but he was a real special guy. And I'm lucky enough, I've adopted, married into a family that's got a special person also. My mother-in-law is real special also. So I know y'all knew that. But I'm in the trust circle up here, right? This is the trust circle. Whatever I say right here, right? It's like seeing a psychiatrist. I'm good, so I have to hear nothing else about it again. So anyway, I know Steve was all worried. See, Timmy ain't got it up there for me yet. Oh, yeah, there it is. I know Steve was real worried today about me speaking like this, but I'm not. I just feel better if I had it up there. That's it. Just knowing I've done enough that some men in here don't even know what that means. They'll go home now and say, baby, what was them verses? And she can be, I don't remember. But I was lucky enough to meet Crystal at the beach one year. Now the love bank, get a love bank going. I was lucky enough to meet Crystal one year at the beach, and I kept noticing her, but I really kept noticing her following me everywhere I was going. And it was weird. After we left the beach that week, we ended up going, I go back to the gym every day. All of a sudden, she's a member at the gym I go to. So I was feeling pressure. So I asked her out. We started dating, all that kind of good stuff. But there were some roadblocks in the way. I used to go over to Scar's to eat every night because I lived by myself behind my mom. So, you know, I didn't eat nothing but hamburger helper every night. So going over to Scar's house was like a big deal because I could eat a real meal. And about 2 years in, you know, you're thinking to yourself, this might be the one, you know. I mean, her parents were courting me hard. You know, it was crazy. But I went to eat fish stew one night, and I noticed the people ahead of me were pulling fish out, like the whole fish, the bone and everything. And I was like, well, maybe Scarlett just forgot. So I get up there, and there was fish and bones too, and I was like, what in the world? These are barbarians. What is going on? And the same thing with chicken pastry. I couldn't get it, but they wanted me back when I had fried chicken. And in my house, the white meat was king. You know, everybody's fighting for the white meat. But I figured out here in the country, the dark meat was the king. So I'm the last one to go, and I'm like all depressed. I'm going to get dark meat. This is terrible. And I go there, there's like 3 breasts still laying there. I'm looking around. Gene was eating, Jeremy was eating, Dexter was eating. I was like, what in the world? So they got me back. So we got married, and well, there's no doubt about it, kids will change. If the kids ain't changed you, there's some problems going on because you just want to live better and be better and, you know, be a positive role model. So we had Cage, and I remember one night sitting with Cage and playing with him on the bed. It was a big deal for me every night when it's about bedtime, laying in bed with him watching TV, because TV is a big deal to me. And so he had the bottle, and I just remember looking at him thinking to myself, you are so awesome. How can we just have one of you? I mean, you are amazing. So then we had James, and the whole amazing thing was it was over. But this is one of these instances that I was talking about earlier about Christ put somebody in your life to change you. Because I remember watching TV. James was probably 2 weeks old. We were building our house in a little rental house down the road. And I remember sitting in the back. I don't know how this happened. Chris was in there watching the big screen TV. I ended up in the back laundry room watching a little 12-inch TV, holding a baby and feeding her. That right there. That right there. That right there. So watching a TV show, and this girl, she was dating some dude, and she ended up, she had a little affair. They were swinging another guy, and then the guys in the locker room were just giving her a hard time. Everybody was, the school was just ragging her, Facebook, Twitter, and all this kind of stuff. And I remember Krista walking by, and I was just shaking my head like, this is wrong. And she was like, what are you talking about? I said, they're giving this girl a hard time. She made one mistake. It was just one mistake. And everybody's judging her. And Crystal stopped for a second. She said, you don't realize it, do you? She said, you've had James for 2 weeks, and you used to be one of them guys. That was you. And James is 2 weeks old, and you done changed your whole concept. Now it's wrong. And it hit me like a brick. I was like, yeah, she's right. So I always thought to myself, God put James in my life to change my thought process and how I looked at women in general. And now when I see this kind of stuff happen, I think to myself, man, that is somebody's daughter. Right there, that is somebody's daughter. That guy just saw smart off to that girl over there and get an argument with her. That's some guy's daughter. She could get home, and this could start a whole big, because if it happens to my daughter, I know what I'm going to do. You're going to revert back to when you were, 19, 20 and go ballistic. So I always remember that when as soon as Steve asked me if I like to speak, the 2 things I'm speaking about today is what hit me. I think about it daily. I think about it when I see James, any of them, Lily, when I see them, or when I see women in general, I think to myself, wow, that's somebody's daughter. And to be respected, for sure. So, but they still need to know. They're right there. They're right there. Anyway, now you know. So, Crystal couldn't have no more kids anymore. And she always speaks about adopting. I'm like, cool, it's no big deal. We went to the MAP classes, which I think Clint and Christy are going through now. And I met another special person at the MAP classes. I think she might be one of the most special people I ever met. Her name was Ann Thompson. And I knew instantly, we were sitting there, and she's sitting beside Crystal, and it wouldn't take her but a couple sentences, and I was like, so she's a little bit over your mom, Crystal, but she's not, anyway, remember, we all here. So they always ask you, they come to a home study, they ask you, well, what races are you considering? Crystal would take any kid, orange, yellow, brown, black, and I was always thinking white. I didn't want the problems that go along. Problems I thought were problems, And it makes me revert back to my dad. I try to think back to some good information, some good talks me and my dad ever had sitting down and talking. Me and Cage ride the games and stuff, and I try to talk to him about life stuff. Decisions you make now is going to be stuff that's going to haunt you later. Just make good decisions. And I try to think back, did my dad ever give me any information like that? The only information I can think of him giving me one time, I had gotten in a fight. I had come home. I had a black eye. And my mom was all over herself. I mean, she was pacing, and thank goodness she thought that was the only fight. But, she's pacing back and forth, and my dad wasn't really saying anything. He was just sitting back watching TV. And when she walked out, I was just sitting there. And he leaned over, and he looked right at me. He was like, did you win? I said, yes, sir. He said, let me tell you something. Don't ever come home if you lost. But I find myself wanting to tell that to Cage, but that's the wrong thing to say, because in my mind, it was okay. Fighting was okay. And another time he told me some information when I was younger in this. He looked at me one day, we're sitting there, and he said, this is going to get you out of a lot of problems. And he said, don't ever bring a black girl home, just like that. And when I think back, that decision I made that day, when I told him I only wanted white, was that something I was thinking about that had been brung up in me as I was going along. So I'm real ashamed of that stuff, and it really haunts me. I think about it daily. But we got Nicole. Crystal got a phone call. You can pick up this little baby girl. She's white. So, of course, I was like, yeah, why not? She's white. It's a baby. That's exactly what we want. So I remember Crystal's all excited. She can't hang sleep at night. She's already got the car seat out by the door, blankets, bottles, everything. And I'm just working. I'm still getting up at 5 o'clock. I'm still going to work. No big deal. A little later on, Crystal calls me. She knows the deal. She said, I'm going to send you a picture. As soon as I get a chance, I'm going to send you a picture. I was like, sure, what's the big deal? She sent me a picture. It's very hard for me to tell this because it's shameful for me. I was in the back. I got a text from her. I looked and I went, what? That baby ain't white. I mean, she looks white. Her skin was white, but her eyes were mighty dark. And I remember going to my brother's office, and I stood up on the desk. I said, man, does that baby look white to you? He said, no. He said, what's the problem? I said, I specifically said white. He said, why did they give you a baby that's not white then? I said, I don't know, but it's Christy Humphrey's fault. It's Christy Humphrey's fault. Now, I couldn't blame nobody. I couldn't go home and fuss at Crystal because I had to get a divorce. Because either a divorce or give Nicole back. So I remember going home that day. I was feeling sorry for myself, mad. And I remember, if everybody's been in my house, I got that long hallway from the garage door all the way down. And I remember I walked in the garage. And I could easily went straight to the living room. But I cut through the kitchen because I was upset, feeling sorry about the whole thing. I like I was putting some stuff up. I walked around, and she was sitting right there on the couch. And, of course, Scarlett was there, but she was sitting in my seat. I don't know if that's a power trip. She always seems to be sitting in my seat. So I walk around, and I put my hands on the back of the couch. And I look over, and Crystal's got her laughing. And Crystal, she's sold out already. She's in love. I look over, Crystal's like, ain't she so pretty? And I was like, yeah. I remember I walked to the bathroom. I did the same thing. I walked around the bathroom. My bathroom's real big, and I'm just walking around. I look in the mirror a couple times. I'm like, Christy Humphrey. Christy Humphrey. So time went on. I felt myself warming up to her, but the night that it really hit me like a brick that this was purposely done by God to put her in my life to change my whole way of thinking about this situation. I was, same thing with Cage and James, all the kids. I go to bed, they go, feed them, putting them asleep. And, of course, the smell hit me out of nowhere, bam. I need to change her. And I was changing her. She's at the age where she's kicking, you got her down, she's moving around. And I remember looking at her, and I was like, wow, you're real pretty. And I said to myself, you're the prettiest kid I've ever seen. And right when I said it to myself, I stepped back and looked around like I might have said it out loud. And I was like, and I remember looking back at her and being like, yes, you are the prettiest thing I've ever seen in my life. And she was so pretty. And I remember, I'll never forget it. I think about it all day. The other day, she was in my lap reading an AR book, and I remember looking at her thinking to myself, one day you're going to like a boy, and that boy's dad might be like me and never had a situation like you. And you might be that situation in his life, that boy's life. And maybe that dad makes the right decision. Because if we don't make the right decision, I might have to go over there. And make a bad decision. But then we got, Gray, and it's been great. It's been a storybook for me. My life couldn't get no better from childhood to now. I couldn't imagine it getting any better, any different. It's just been amazing. But, that's just the situations that were laid on me. And I've known it since day one coming here. I've seen men get up here and women get up here, and I always knew in my heart if Steve ever asked me to speak in front of y'all, these were two things I was speaking on, no doubt about it. And I'm just glad that everybody here, and especially my family, was put in my life. So that's it. I'll close my part out. I can still go 5 more minutes. I saved a little bit of time, but if everybody bow their heads, I pray real quick for us. Lord, thank you for this opportunity to come in here and for me and Josh just to allow you to hear what was on our heart. And just thank you for all the stuff and challenges you put in my way, the little blocks here and there that you use to steer me the way that you want me to go. And just thank you for always being there for me and all of us, no matter how many times we turn our back on you, you are always there for us. In your holy precious name I pray. Amen. Thank you.
If you get your Bibles out and turn to Luke chapter. You know, the reason we do this, we come to church week after week after week, and a lot of times we see all of these folks that are in here with us. We know most everybody by name, but you really don't get to know someone until you hear them share their heart, do you? And I suspect, even listening to Josh and Jamie this morning, you were going like, wow, I didn't know they thought that way. I didn't know that God had dealt with them in this particular way. You know, because the thing that they said today were things probably that you and I may struggle with, whether it's pride or judging others by maybe the color of their skin. We deal with these very things. And until we see that we all struggle with these situations in our life, that we'll never learn to overcome until we can see someone that is overcome or working towards overcoming pride or working to overcome how they see people differently. Because God will teach you something. God is going to teach you something if you get around Him long enough. Amen? You hang around with Him long enough, He's going to teach you a lesson. Why? Why doesn't He? People say all the time, well, God just loves me just the way I am. Well, my goodness. Let me tell you, God loves you, but He's not just the way you are that He loves you. He's got so much more in mind for you to be. See, you've got a purpose, and our purpose is to glorify Him, is to bring attention to Him through our everyday lives, whether or not we're a gunny sergeant in the Marine Corps or whether or not we are daddy of 5 people in a household. It doesn't matter. Wherever it is that you are, God's got a purpose for your life to point to Him. I just want to thank you, Josh, for sharing your heart. I wasn't expecting that. That's awesome, brother. Let's give him a hand. I'm thinking that's a preacher up there. I thought. I said, you just look the part, man, especially with the glasses. Let's see. I got some. I don't think I can pull it off like you though, but it don't work. Got to have a couple of muscles to go with it. Jamie Jones, you don't ever surprise me, brother. I'm going to tell you, you're all right in my book. I don't care what everybody else says, and especially what you're going to get out of Gene and Scarlett when you get home. You're going to pay for that. You may not get no more breast chicken. It can be the leg and the thigh from now on. God bless you guys. Do we have an invitation, Bob? Okay, come up and lead us as we